It was October of 2010, 9 years after her daughter disappeared. Nancy Eklund was still waiting and doing what she could. She was now at 3,535 days without Lindsay. She didn't know it, but a few miles away, Larry Montgomery was tightening the noose around Chris McAmis. Larry had recruited a motorcycle cop from a nearby town to go undercover.
They needed a police officer who looked like a college student and didn't have the mannerisms of a police officer.
Officer Spring Sendelli fit the bill. How were you dressed?
Jeans on and just a little shirt, something that a college student would wear, but something that would also appeal to a guy.
Were you armed?
Yes.
And you were wearing a wire?
Yes.
Hi, are you Chris?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Nicole Anderson. I'm from Fullerton College Torch Magazine.
Okay.
Officer Sendelli was posing as a student reporter, complete with a phony press pass. She knocked on Chris's front door. Chris had talked to a student reporter from Lindsay's college in the past about the case. You use your real name?
No, I used a fake name. Told him who I was, and
Well, we just received word at the Torch Magazine that remains have been found that they believe belong to Lindsay. So I guess they're doing DNA testing right now, and in the meantime, I'm supposed to go contact friends, family to get their initial reaction for a story.
Okay.
when I told him that the police believed that they found Lindsay's remains, his demeanor changed.
How?
Quite drastically, actually. I could see that his color in his face went white.
The police had not found Lindsay's remains. That was a lie. Police do it all the time, and it's legal. In fact, Larry had tried to find Lindsay up at the construction location where Chris had worked, and he'd gotten some interest from cadaver dogs, but nothing more. Just down the street from Chris's house, Detective Bryce Angel of Placentia PD, who'd been assigned to work with Larry, was listening and keeping an eye on the action. So you're watching him while this interview happens on his front doorstep?
Yeah, I was sitting, 10 houses down watching the reporter, or the undercover police officer. Once she left the area, we were in business.
What happens?
Later that night, he was seen coming out of his house and going into the garage, lights go on, and we're talking like 3 o'clock in the morning. But it was clearly the sign of somebody who couldn't sleep.
Detectives were sure that they had rattled their suspect. The next day, they trailed Chris when he left his house.
And at some point, it became apparent that he knew that we were following him.
They broke off surveillance and brought Chris in.
Chris, have a seat.
Larry had read all about Chris McAmis, and he'd looked at tape of every time Chris had been in for an interview.
Here's what the situation is.
Today, he and Chris were going to meet for the first time.
I have been investigating this case for about 2 years now as a cold case investigator.
Larry had a plan to get Chris to talk without asking for a lawyer.
You probably want to know what's going on, what's happening, why you're sitting here.
Larry promised to fill him in on the case in detail, thinking Chris would want to know if the cops had the goods. And then maybe he'd have something to say.
Since you're under arrest, I do have to advise you of your rights, which I will do in a moment. After that, what I'd like to do is I'd like to explain to you everything.
Larry read Chris his rights, and then before Chris could really respond, Larry laid out his case. He said he knew Chris had never dropped Lindsay off that night, because the ATM photo that at first fooled investigators actually proved Chris wasn't there.
It wasn't your truck, but for years it was thought of that it was your truck, and it's not. Matter of fact, your truck did not go by that night. It wasn't there. So
he told Chris about the credit card statement and how he found someone who remembered Chris working on the job site.
all of a sudden, big red flags. You are working. You are up there when you said you were not. But he said, you guys don't work on Saturday. Lindsay disappeared on a Saturday morning. None of your credit card usage up there is on any weekend. All of it's on weekdays except for the day Lindsay disappeared. So you're not up there working that day.
He told Chris the lie about Lindsay being found.
We went and recently got DNA from mother and dad of Lindsay and had that checked against the body, and it's Lindsay. So now we've got Lindsay up there, right in the area where you were, right at the time when you did not drop her off, and we have enough to prove the crime.
And knowing about Chris's anger issues with previous girlfriends, Larry summoned up a little empathy to draw Chris in.
I know that you have that ability to be angry, but I don't know what would cause her to get you that angry, or what she could have done.
Chris didn't say much until a little body language revealed that Larry was on the right track.
Was it a premeditated thing? I didn't think it was. So what did she do?
Larry finished talking. He was hoping Chris would give it up.
I think I need a lawyer to talk to you about this with me.
Well, it's up to you.
The Supreme Court has made it pretty clear. If someone declares that they want an attorney, the interview is supposed to stop until one can be hired or provided. But in this case, Larry was walking a line, believing that asking for a lawyer isn't the same as wondering if you need one. Corrine Loomis was watching from another room. That's about as close as you can get to the "I want a lawyer" line without actually crossing
Saying
it.
that I want it, right.
Were you holding your breath when he said that?
Yes, this was a make or break interview. If he didn't confess, he was going to walk again.
Coming up,
I knew that was the moment of truth.
years of mystery come down to one chance.
Nobody likes to be labeled a monster. Only you have the other side of the story.
What kind of story would he tell? When the Night Lindsay Disappeared continues.